Keys and certificates are being used today to establish a trust relationship between two unrelated parties. And there is an inherent risk associated with that trust if those keys and certificates aren't protected appropriately. And so you really need to understand where that certificate came from, who issued that certificate, and should you really trust that certificate. The other thing that you really need to understand is having visibility within your environment, what certificates and keys are there, what's in the trust store, what you should and should not trust. And if it's in your trust store, your system's inherently trusted. Should you be trusting it? And in many cases, the answer to that is no. A classic example is the Chinese CA CNIC, which both Google and Mozilla has said that they no longer trust that CA and the certificates issued from that CA. But how many organizations actually went out and looked within their trust stores and actively removed those certificates from those trust stores? If you've got an automated solution where you can go in and proactively make actions across multiple trust stores throughout the environment in a very rapid fashion, that's going to lower your risk profile significantly. Across the industry, people should be proactively looking and managing their trust stores and just not blindly trusting everything that's in there. Proliferation of keys and certificates on the internet is getting larger and larger every day. And the trust and the foundation of that trust between those devices, they're being used for VPN access, for Wi-Fi access, for mobile devices. They're being used all across the internet in multiple situations and in multiple areas. And in order to really maintain an effective trust relationship between those devices, you have to have a firm understanding of the foundation on which those keys and certificates were issued in the first place. And maintaining and managing those trust stores and those relationships between your browser and a mobile device, or your browser and a Wi-Fi access point, or your mobile device and a Wi-Fi access point. Do you know which certificates you should be trusting? How do you know a legitimate Wi-Fi access point versus a rogue one? Today, most folks don't even think about which certificates are in their trust stores. The threatscape, or the risks associated with keys and certificates, is evolving over time and getting more and more prolific. In 2011, we had certificate authority breaches, Did you know Tar and Komodo being, the most known about. Now, the threat actors are actually trying to get legitimate certificates maliciously issued so that they can establish that trust relationship and hide within your trust boundaries. And it's really important to have good visibility and understanding and comprehension of which keys and certificates are being used within your environment, where they came from, how they were issued, etc. The FBI issued a public service announcement just earlier this year around the increase on the Internet of Things and the proliferation of web-connected devices. A lot of these devices are connected via just simple passwords or no authentication at all. But as we see the expansion of the Internet of Things, we're going to see the expansion of security keys and certificates being issued as well, or being utilized in those situations. That provides new venues or new avenues for these threat actors to be able to get into your environment and to do bad things. Everybody experiences system and service outages due to expired certificates, not managing certificates correctly. A lot of industries, a lot of organizations are manually managing certificates, whether it's on paper or through a spreadsheet or through some other homegrown solution. Manual management of certificates is just inherently flawed. there are some significant risks associated with that. We need to get some levels of automation. We need to get some levels of automated controls where we reduce the human factor in the certificate lifecycle process, because that's typically where things start to break down. People that don't do certificate management every single day, 8 hours a day, are not going to remember. If you've got a 12-month certificate, you're replacing it once a year, or even if you've got a bunch of them and it's once a month or once a quarter that you're managing certificates, you're going to forget some little step along the way. So by removing the human out of the loop and providing more automation, you're going to make your certificate management process more efficient, more effective, and more secure. So the benefits of having automation and automated tools to be able to manage the different life cycle events throughout key and certificate management is you're really providing not only operational efficiencies, but you're also improving your risk levels as well, or reducing the risk levels and improving your security posture, because you know that those processes are being performed the same way across all of your systems all of the time. Whereas if you're doing it in a very manual, person-oriented fashion, even from week to week, there may be some slight differences, or from administrator to administrator, there's going to be differences as well, and there's some inherent risk associated with that. So by having more automation and tools to be able to perform the life cycle actions of your certificates, and also in managing the trust stores associated with your certificates, you're going to reduce the risk levels as well, because there you're going to be able to better and more efficiently control which certificates should be in your environment and which certificates should not be in your environment. The certificate authorities, as they're being infiltrated and hacked, they're getting a legitimate certificate issued to a malicious actor. So you need to take action to be able to remove that certificate authority and those certificates from your environment in a very rapid fashion. And if you're manually doing that, it's going to take a long period of time. Whereas if you have a good automated lifecycle process where you can take rapid action to remediate and remove a large volume of certificates and to remove certificates from the trust stores quickly and effectively, that's going to put you in a much better risk profile as well. This problem really isn't anything new. We've known about this for several years, since the DigiNotar and the Komodo breaches back in 2011. In 2012, NIST issued some guidelines around being able to respond to certification authority breaches and fraudulent certificates being issued. Here we are in 2015, several years later, and the industry really hasn't moved the needle very far as a whole. We here at Wells, we've looked at this. We're taking some proactive actions to be able to address some of those issues and being able to respond to large-scale incidents and to be able to perform large-scale certificate remediation activities. Heartbleed is another example where SSL is being attacked. And if SSL is being attacked and you've got certificates which are part of the foundation of establishing that connection, if that connection's no longer trusted and those keys are no longer trusted, you have to be able to rapidly replace all of those keys and certificates. That is a problem that we're all facing, that we all have to address. So another area that we really need to deal with and address within the key and certificate security model is in the application development space. So there's a lot of focus, and there's been a lot of focus in the application development space over secure coding practices in making sure that the code itself is secure from vulnerable attacks, SQL injection attacks, and all of that have been around for many, many years. But the other components of that is, how is the application or that service protecting the credentials, the keys and certificates, and the authentication credentials that are being utilized by that application? We know they all have service accounts, that they're talking to each other And so they have to leverage keys and certificates in order to effectively establish those trust relationships between the different systems and between the different applications. So if the storage and the protection of those keys and certificates within the application itself is flawed, then the protection of those keys and the trust between those two different endpoints is also flawed. Automation will improve the operational efficiency. It will reduce your risk profile. It will reduce the threat vector surface or the attack surface as well, because you are able to perform that management and provide the security around those keys and certificates in a more comprehensive and consistent fashion.